Hi there, my name is Sherry Forsyth. I'm a peak performance coach and I'm doing a theme on happiness for this month of July. And we've spoken about whether happiness is comes from external things or internal things. Those are on previous videos. Today we're talking about whether we can measure our happiness. If so, how do we actually do that? I'm also going to be giving you some tests that you yourself can do in this session, in this video. So this video is really for people who are wanting to, they like the sort of more researchy side. I'm going to be giving you tips of people to go and have a look at, to follow some different theories of happiness. So if you're not that way inclined and you're not really sparked by maybe doing some research on your own or finding out the more academic side of happiness, yeah, then this video probably isn't for you. But if it does spark you, then yeah, hang with me. We're going to be talking about happiness, the tests that can be done, the people who are very involved in the research of happiness, and a whole movement called positive psychology, which actually is the study of happiness. So there's going to be a wealth of knowledge for you to, or tips for you to follow and research on your own. So in the 1950s, the research was done to find out how many people were happy. And in 1950, 52% of people said that they were happy. So that's about half, which isn't great, actually. Now, in more recent times, only 36% of people say they're happy. In other words, that's 1/3, which means that the majority of people on this earth are not feeling that they're particularly happy. So we need to be looking at it and seeing what we can do to change that. According to Etymology Online, the word for happy in most languages is the word for lucky. Okay, so perhaps our ancestors believed that happiness was in fact largely a product of luck. Do we think that that's so? Is it not a vital factor in a good life? Or is it just a bonus that you happened to be lucky, so therefore you got to be happy? Way back in 1929, Walter A. Pitkin wrote a book called The Psychology of Happiness. And he differentiated between happiness and the related emotions like enjoyment and pleasure. But he also said that happiness was not merely the result of luck or chance. Okay, it wasn't the result of luck or chance. And since then, there's been lots of research that's been done on happiness. So, can we measure happiness? Well, before we can measure anything, we've got to be able to define it. So can we define what happiness is? It's a very broad and overwhelming topic, actually, to be able to pinpoint it to just one tiny definition. So there are lots of takes on happiness, what it is, what is important about it. And even though there's a lot of people who think differently about it, they generally believe, they being the researchers, that happiness, they know what it feels like. They know that it feels you're happy with life, you're in a good mood, you're energized, you've got positive emotions. So everyone agrees what it feels like. But people then start disagreeing when they're trying to actually define it. So Del Fave and her colleagues in 2011 noted that happiness is definitely an ambiguous term, and it can have a number of meanings, which include the fact that it's a transient emotion. It's synonymous with joy. It can also be an experience of deep fulfillment and accomplishment. So here we're talking more about it being linked to life purpose. It can also be a long-term process of meaning-making and identity through achieving things, going after your potential, and achieving your goals. So for this video, we're going to just use a basic definition, the Oxford Dictionary's definition of happiness, which is: happiness is a state characterized by contentment and general satisfaction with one's current situation. Okay, so that's the definition that we're going to kind of stick with. So let's have a look at a few theories of happiness and see whether we can measure it or not. Bearing in mind that happiness is a subjective feeling, so many people feel that it's impossible to measure a subjective thing, and that we need to be able to measure it quantitatively as well as qualitatively. So quantitatively means, you know, numbers that we can put, we can measure it according to some very concrete thing, whereas a qualitative evaluation is asking how people are feeling. So I hope that clears that up for you. So Ed Diener did a lot of work, and he reckons that happiness definitely is a subjective thing, but it can be measured. He thinks that people are happy if they think they are. So ask people, are you happy? And then they will know. Then you'll be able to say, yes, I've measured it. But we are still trying to work out ways of, different theories of happiness as well as different ways of measuring it. So there are three ways that psychologists generally will study happiness. The first way is they look at a need and goal satisfaction theory. So there's a whole lot of theories that will fall under this, of the need and goal satisfaction theories. So really what these theories state is that happiness comes from striving to achieve and to reach your goals. It's one of our fundamental human needs to be achieving, and when we meet the basic needs of autonomy, of competence, and of relatedness, then we are happy. Okay, so that is the one area under which lots of theories fall. The second one is saying that it's according to genetic and personality predisposition theories. And what these bunch of theories are saying is that well-being is basically influenced by our genes. This also therefore implies that we can't really change our happiness much over time. Okay, see if you agree with that or not. And the third way that psychologists test happiness is through process or activity theories, where they are saying that our well-being can be improved by participating and engaging in activities that we're passionate about, that require effort, and therefore we feel that we've achieved something. So yeah, so those are the kind of the broad brushstrokes of the theories of happiness. Psychologists also ask the question, and I'm asking that to you as well now, is it possible to increase our happiness? What do you think? Is it possible to increase our happiness, or are we just born with it? Is it like the number 2, genetic and personality predisposition theories, where we can't really change it much? We're born with it, and that's what we've got to make do with. So some say that we can definitely increase happiness, and others say that it's quite stable over time. One of the things that I found really interesting about the research of happiness is there's a thing called the happiness set point. Okay, which is, I like to think of it like the homeostasis of the body. So let's say, you know, the body is going to be in balance there, let's say using oxygenation or hydration or whatever. And we might go a little bit up and a little bit lower, but we will always come back to that level, that homeostasis level of happiness. Okay, that's called the set point of happiness. So what they're saying is we might be a little bit happier and we might be a little bit lower, but generally we'll come back to that set point of happiness. And some of the psychologists are saying what you get is what you get. So if your set point of happiness is here, well, that's fine. If it's here, well, that's not so good for you. And if it's very high, then you're lucky. But you can't do much to change it. However, there's lots of research showing that you can change that level of set point of happiness. One of the big things is if you practice a lot of gratitude in your life, scientific studies have shown that your set point of happiness will increase if you live your life in gratitude. So it'll go from being here to being here. And then you might go up and down a little bit, but your whole set point has been changed, which means that you're going to be basically much happier for longer periods of time. I hope that made sense. Okay, so we can improve our happiness. We can improve the set point of happiness. So let's then talk a little bit about what authentic happiness is. And there's a whole new area of research saying that what authentic happiness is, it's happiness when we are working and living in our strengths, not our weaknesses. And there's a whole new branch of research showing that that's in fact what we need to do. So we don't need to waste our time building up all our weak points to try and make us balanced. What we need to do is know where our strengths are and work in those strengths and live in those strengths. Because if we are living in a strengths, we're doing what we like to do and we're doing what we're good at. So obviously we're going to be much happier. So that's a really important thing to remember, is one of the things of increasing and improving our happiness is let's be in our strengths, working and living in our strengths rather than our weaknesses. So then we moving more towards the modern era. And there are three aspects that now make up the theories of happiness. And there are three views. Okay, the first one is hedonism, which means that in order to be happy, we just follow pleasure all the time. Okay, so that is hedonia. We follow pleasure. The second one is eudaimonia, which means that we are looking at our life satisfaction. Okay, we pursue, we attain purpose, meaning, challenge, personal growth, achievement. Those things will lead us to be happy. Okay, and then the third one is the affective state theory, which basically says that happiness depends on your overall emotional state. And as I say, some people think it's really easy to change, other people think it's really difficult. Okay, so a subjective measure of happiness is one of the main guys is Dr. Ed Diener, who talks about subjective well-being. So in other words, it's a way of measuring how you are, but it isn't an objective measurement. It comes from within. And so in order to measure subjective well-being, we're looking at three main components. The first one is your satisfaction with your life. How good is your life generally? Okay. The second one is how much of the time are you in a positive mood? And that is all again for you to evaluate. And the third thing is an absence of a negative mood. Okay, so those are the three areas that are being measured when we look at subjective well-being as proposed by Dr. Diener. What he's saying there is you can basically ask people how happy they are subjectively, very simply. So I'm asking you. The first question is, are you happy? Are you happy now? Have you been happy this week? Have you been happy this month? Okay, and the second one is, how would you rate your happiness from 1 to 10, with 1 being unhappy and 10 being very happy? So Diener was the first person who said that we were able to measure subjectively the whole topic of happiness. And they're looking at things that they can measure, like also how you smile, what people say about happy you are, as well as how you are feeling. Okay, so it's a subjective test. Then Bradburn in 1969, he said that there are only 2 things that determine that we need to test. The first is a positive emotion. How much positivity do you have? And how much negativity do you have? And that was balanced against a whole lot of questions. Then what you do is you subtract the negative score of the negative states that you've had from the positive state, and that once again gives you a measurement of your satisfaction with life. Okay, and if you are interested in doing a bit of research, it's the Bradburn Affect Balance Scale. Bradburn Affect Balance Scale, that is well worth looking into, and you can put yourself through that test. Okay, so I hope you are still with me. A more objective way of testing happiness is done through neuroscience. In other words, looking at as we've spoken before about the fact that emotions have a physiological effect on the chemicals in your body. So when you are anxious, the brain, the pituitary, all the glands in the brain will suffuse your body with certain chemicals that can be measured. Okay, things like cortisol is the anxiety hormone, and the good hormones that are also are serotonins, the dopamines. So a more objective way of measuring happiness is actually to look at the neuroscience of chemistry and measure those chemicals. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, so the answer to can we test happiness is a resounding yes, we actually can, both qualitatively and quantitatively. So in measuring the subjective side, the subjective well-being, there are two main tests that are used. I'm going to just talk about one, and then we're actually going to do the second one. So the one I'm going to talk about is called PANAS. That's PANAS. And it was created by David Watson, Leanne Clark, and Orca Tellegen in 2018. So that's very recent. It was developed to make it simple to understand how you feel in certain different time periods. So there's a whole list of emotions. You give a score to each one of them, and then based on that score, you can see how you're doing. An interesting element of this test is that you can also do it according to a different time span. So you can, in answering the test, you can say how you're feeling exactly this moment. Okay, you can also do the test is how am I feeling today generally, or this week, or this month, or this year, and that also can change. You might be happy right in this moment, but actually you might be having quite a tough week. So I think that makes it a very valuable test. The second test, which we actually are going to do, is a satisfaction with life scale. So it's called SWLS. And it was created by the researchers Dina, Emmons, Larson, and Griffin in 1985. So we're going back quite a long time. And so I'm going to do the test with you. So grab a pen and paper. It's not long and it's not difficult, I promise. And also you can't fail it. So what I want you to write on your piece of paper firstly is the way you're going to score it is from number 1 to number 7, and number 1 means you strongly disagree. Okay, number 1, you strongly disagree. Number 2, you disagree with the statements that I'm going to read out. Okay, number 3, you slightly disagree. Okay, number 3 is slightly disagree. Number 4, you neither agree or disagree. So in other words, you're neutral. Number 5, you slightly agree. Number 6, you agree. And number 7, you strongly agree. So I'm just going to go through them quickly to make sure you've got them. 1 is strongly disagree. 2 is disagree. 3 is slightly disagree. 4 is neither agree nor disagree. We're neutral. 5 is slightly agree. 6 is agree. And 7 is strongly agree. Okay, so I'm going to read 5 statements to you, and I want you from a gut level just to give a score to each of the 5 statements. Okay, don't think too much, just let it come from within. So statement number 1, question number 1, you're going to evaluate from 1 to 7. In most ways, my life is close to my ideal. Okay, in most ways, my life is close to my ideal. Give yourself a score from 1 to 7. Remembering it's a gut feel. The second one is the conditions of my life are excellent. Okay, the conditions of my life are excellent. 1, strongly disagree, to 7, strongly agree. Give yourself a number. The third question, I think, is quite a big question. I'm satisfied with my life. Do you agree with that or do you disagree with that? I am satisfied with my life. That's number 3. Number 4 is, so far I have gotten the important things I want in my life. Okay, so what you really wanted, you have received it, whether it's material or whether it's an achievement. So question number 4, so far I have gotten the important things I want in my life. Give yourself a score, 1 to 7. And then the last question, number 5, is, if I could live my life over, I would change almost nothing. If I could live my life over, I would change almost nothing. So I'm going to ask you to add up your total of those 5 questions. I'm going to give you a minute or 2. And then I will let you know what the result is. Okay, always with these tests, just remember this is a guideline. It's not, you're not willing to lay your head on a block about all of these things, but it's just a guideline to show you where you are. So I hope you've managed to tally up your total. So if you have a score between 5 and 9, you are extremely dissatisfied. And I hope there are not too many of you who have scored between a 5 and a 9. If you scored between a 10 and a 14, you are dissatisfied with your life. If you score between 15 and 19, you are only slightly dissatisfied. So there's a lot of hope for you. And if you score the round figure of 20, you are neutral. You're neither satisfied or dissatisfied with your life. So we're going to try and make sure that we head you more to the being satisfied with your life. If you score between 21 and 25, you are slightly satisfied. Between 26 and 30, you are satisfied with your life. And between 31 and 35, you are extremely satisfied. So I hope that's helped you a little bit, just for you to see where you are on the scale of happiness. I'm going to just mention a few other happiness scales that you can have a look at and research if you would like to. The third one is called the Subjective Happiness Scale, and it was created by Sonia Lyubomirsky. I really battle with her name, and I apologize to Sonia. That's Lyubomirsky. And this happiness scale was developed by her and Heidi Lepper in 1999. And it takes, the way this test works, it's very much customized to you, okay? It's made and formatted, and it's a very personal test for each respondent that uses it. And generally, there are 4 items to assess your global subjective happiness. In other words, a general happiness. And you read 4 statements. So once again, it's quite an easy test to do. And then again, you'll rate it from 1 to 7 and see whether you are a happy person or not a very happy person. Once again, this scale, like the other previous 2 scales, is very reliable, and it's been shown to be scientifically reliable. In other words, it's worth taking. The 4th test is called the Steen Happiness Index by Seligman, Steen, Park, and Peterson. This was 2005. And it consists of 20 items. You read through the statements to see what best describes how you are, and eventually you will be divided into one of 3 categories. You'll either have a pleasant life, you'll have an engaged life, or a meaningful life. So that again gives you a little bit more detail as to where your happiness comes from. So that is the Steen, spelled S-T-E-E-N, Happiness Index. And then the last one is by Fordyce, and his happiness scale is very much linked to the emotions that you're feeling. And so it's your emotional well-being that is linked to happiness. And what he measures is 2 things. The first thing is a scale of whether you're happy or unhappy. And from 0 to 10. And then a very interesting added onto this test is he also evaluates the approximate percentage of time that he or she feels happy or unhappy. So now we're saying generally and for how long and what percentage of your day are you unhappy or happy. I think that's also very relevant. Okay, so we've looked to see that there is evidence from neuroscience. There are ways of subjectively measuring tests, using tests to measure your happiness. And I think that that's really good for you to have those tools that you can use. So let's talk about a few of the movers and shakers in the research industry of happiness. And then you can go and look at the TED Talks, you can go look at their research, look up their books, which I'm going to give you, so that you can get more knowledge from the people that appeal to you. So we've already spoken about Robert Waldinger, the longest study run by Harvard University. It's the longest study of happiness ever. Fantastic TED Talk by him. Robert Waldinger with the long-term study on happiness, where they realized or they showed that happiness comes from your relationships with other people mainly. Okay, so it's not external things, it's your relationships. Then Robert Holden talks about the Happiness Project, and this is the Happiness Project in the UK. And shortly we're going to do 1 or 2 tests by Robert Holden as well. Then another chap is Martin Seligman, who's an author and a psychologist. He's also very well known for his work on learned helplessness, which is basically depression. But his one book is on learned optimism. So obviously he was just talking about the opposite there. So his books are, his first book is Authentic Happiness, Using the New Positive Psychology to Realize Your Potential for Lasting Fulfillment. And he wrote that book in 2002. And then his second book is entitled Learned Optimism, How to Change Your Mind and Your Life. Okay, so go to my favorite site in the whole world, Z Library. That's z-lib.org, and you can download the most amazing PDF books and you don't have to pay a cent. So go and have a look for those 2 books at Z Library. He was also responsible for developing what's called the PERMA model, P-E-R-M-A, and he was he mentioned it in his 3rd book, which he wrote in 2011, called Flourish. The P stands for positive emotions, the E for engagement with life, R for relationships, M for meaning, and A for achievement. He reckons it's those 5 things that make us happy. Okay, another man that you can follow is Michael W. Fordyce. He's actually been a pioneer in the whole subject of happiness research. And he, as we mentioned, he's got the happiness scale, and that it can be measured and deliberately increased. So that's all good news for us. Ed Diener, that I have spoken about, he is known as Dr. Happiness. And he is a leading researcher in the field of positive psychology, which again, I've mentioned, positive psychology is the study of happiness. So go and have a look. It's the most wonderful, proactive stuff. Positive psychology is what you need to look at. And Ed Diener is best known for his term subjective well-being and the fact that it can be measured. And then the scale, the test that we did, the SWLS scale, is all his work. The next person, and it's the unpronounceable surname, is Sonia Lubomirsky. I know I haven't said it right, but anyway, she's a research psychologist. She writes a lot for the Psychology Today blog, The How of Happiness. Okay, she's a professor and a vice chair at the University of California, and she's written 2 books. The first one is The How of Happiness, and the second one is The Myth of Happiness. So those are books that you can go and have a look at and increase your knowledge. The next chap we're going to speak about, I have spoken about before, Dan Gilbert. He's known as Professor Happiness, not Dr. Happiness. And he has done a huge amount of work on, there's a lovely TED talk of Dan Gilbert's called The Science of Happiness. So go and have a look at that. I have mentioned it in previous videos. And what Dan Gilbert says is most of our happiness comes from our relationship with family and friends. Okay, he also suggests that happiness comes from experiences rather than objects or goods. So in other words, he's saying live life, don't feel that you could only get happiness because of the materialism of our lives. So he's actually wonderful. All of these guys are wonderful. And then the last chap I want to mention is Tal Ben-Shahar, who's a Harvard professor, and his classes at Harvard are always chock-a-block full, which shows that people really are wanting to know more about the science of happiness. Can it be measured? Can it be improved? Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of an exercise now that was developed by Robert Holden from the Happiness Project in the UK. And he wants us to be able to recognize when we are truly happy. So once again, if you have your pen and paper, it's not a difficult test. It's going to take 2 seconds for you to do, or you might just want to write down what his way of testing it is. And again, it's subjective, and you might want to do the test later. So what you do is you write down the following sentences and the start of the sentences, and then you complete them. Okay, so the first one is, I am at my happiest when. Okay, I'm at my happiest when. And then you fill out. When I'm with my mates, when we're having a braai, when I'm listening to music, when I'm working, whatever it may be. Okay, I'm happiest when. The second one is, I feel most content when. Okay, so there's a difference between happiness and being content. Okay, so the second one is, I feel most content when. And then you complete it. And this can be done daily, weekly, and you'll get different answers probably most of the time. The third one is, I feel like I'm following my joy when. Okay, then complete the sentence. I feel like I'm following my joy when. The fourth one is, I feel most alive when. Okay, I feel most alive when I'm teasing other people. I feel most alive when I'm exercising. I feel most alive when I'm having a real good belly laugh. Okay, and the last question is, I enjoy myself the most when. Okay, I enjoy myself the most when. Maybe it's when you're connecting with others, when you are having a deep and meaningful conversation, or maybe it's you enjoy yourself most when you have solitary moments and you might be on your own, you might be fishing, you might be listening to music. Okay. So I hope that test has helped you. And once again, you can repeat that over and over and over again. It just is a nice way to check in with your happiness. So there are some blocks to living with happiness. Okay. The pursuit of happiness by definition means it's a pursuit. We're chasing happiness. And that's the block, is that if we're so busy trying to chase something, we might not be able to see that in the present moment we are happy. So that can be one of the blocks, that we're permanently striving for something that might never come. Okay. The second block is the fact that we're so busy trying to find a meaning or purpose which is going to make us happy in our lives. So we might be trying to find that, and we're so busy kind of intellectualizing it that we're not living it. Okay, we're always going to be saying, I will be happy when. Okay, so I'll only be happy when I've lost 20 kilograms. I'll only be happy when I've got my degree. I'll only be happy when I'm married. And so we permanently are saying we are happy when something is going to happen which may or may not happen. Okay, so that's the second block to happiness. The third one is an interesting thing. The whole idea of positive thinking, which people think is such a great thing, but is very difficult to do. But very often we actually are suffering from the fact that we are not able to always be in that positive way of thinking. The other thing as well is we can use that positive thinking as a mask to actually hide our unhappiness. So we all know, you might be feeling absolutely awful, and somebody asks you how you are, and then you'll say, oh no, I'm fine, I'm great. Meantime, actually deep down, you are unhappy, you are battling with something. And I'm not saying that we all have to go around morbidly all the time, but very often people will use that kind of positive thought processes, positive emotions, to block what is really happening. They can't resolve those issues, and therefore they are artificially happy, I suppose I can say. Okay, one of the greatest causes of unhappiness is when we use other things to mask our unhappiness, if I could put it like that. Okay, we can limit our happiness by the following things. And if you would like to add any more of your own, please feel free in the comment box below to add. So these are things that will stop us from feeling happy. We can have chronic busyness. And I know myself, I've definitely done that one. Okay, chronic busyness, no time to think whether we're happy or not happy, we're just going along. Okay, masks of any sort. Okay, I can play the martyr, I can always say I'm fine. Whatever mask we put on is stopping us from feeling happy fully. One of the other things is self-neglect. Okay, we don't worry about ourselves. We're always the last in the queue. We don't take time and value what we are doing and how we are being. So we can neglect ourselves terribly, which can lead to lots of burnout and all those horrible things that we don't want to be part of. Another thing is destination living. In other words, nothing else is good enough. We have to be in the special place, in the special hotel, in the special country. Otherwise, the holiday is not worth it. Okay, so some people get caught up in that. What else? We don't make time for any kind of creativity or joy in our life. We're too busy just doing our humdrum, same old, same old. Okay? We can hold grudges and get locked in the negativity and unforgiveness of always being angry with other people, even if what they did was 20, 30 years ago. Okay, so staying in unforgiveness is a result of holding grudges. And then the last one that I know of is being very self-righteous. And that is firstly very unpleasant for any other people who are around you. But if you always have to be right, if you have to know all the answers, it's not unpleasant. It's very unpleasant for other people, and it's also not good for you. Okay, so if you can think of any more, please feel free to put them in the comment box. And now I'm going to do the third little exercise for you, which once again comes from Robert Holden. And it's actually one sentence that you repeat 3 times. So the sentence is, one way I am limiting my happiness is, and you complete the sentence. Okay, one way I am limiting my happiness is. And if you want to add the words right now, you can. Okay, so one way I'm limiting my happiness right now is. Okay, it makes it more immediate rather than a general statement. So you repeat that 3 times, and obviously you can do that weekly or monthly just to check in and see how you're doing. Okay, so getting towards the end of the video, we can glean from positive psychology that happiness is a state, it's not a trait. Okay, it's a state of being, which means that we can alter it. It's not long lasting, it's fleeting. Happiness also mustn't be confused with other words that have very similar meaning, like joy, ecstasy, bliss, meaning. Okay, and then the last thing is that happiness can be either feeling or showing happiness, which shows that it's neither external or internal only that will make us happy. It's both external and internal factors that contribute to our happiness. Okay, so I hope that has made sense for you. I hope you've enjoyed doing the few tests. And now I want to ask you whether an individual can learn to be happy. And the answer to this is a resounding yes. If you start consistently applying the habits of very happy people, which was the previous video of last week. What are the habits of happy people? And if we can consistently practice those, we ourselves will increase our happiness, and we'll also be able to increase our set point of happiness, as I said at the beginning of the video. So, can money buy happiness? What does the research show? What do you guys think? Can money buy happiness? So it seems from research that there is a positive effect which is associated with wealth. It enables us to do certain things that maybe we wouldn't be able to. But although wealth can be a sign of success, and it enables us to make more choices, it doesn't actually buy us happiness, which is what a lot of people mistakenly have thought. Okay, because that's materialistic, and in all the research, it's not things that make us happy, it's relationships. So what causes our happiness in life generally? Happiness is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We're in it for the long term. We want to consistently be doing things that make us happy every single day. So we're looking at commitment to positivity, engagement, relationships, meaning, achievement, vitality, energy. The list is endless. Deep trusting and deep trusting connection with another human being absolutely increase our happiness. And so the quality of our relationships, whether it's family and friends, is hugely, hugely important. So once again, it is worth investing the time, even if it's a little 5-minute phone call, just to keep those relationships going with family and friends. The other thing that is important to happiness is to find meaning in our work and in our life. It helps us to feel that we are engaging in our strengths, that we're making a difference, that our work is worthwhile, and that then helps us. It helps us tap into another element of happiness, which is when we are living according to our core values. Okay, so what really drives you? What do you really think is important? And you live according to those values. Okay, so in conclusion, this has been a talk very much geared to people who are more researchy, people who like to gain more knowledge, more academic knowledge. There have been lots of people that you can look up, lots of books you can read, TED Talks you can go and listen to, so that you get a knowledge, more of a knowledge about what happiness is, so that you can build your own. I hope I've given you decent leads to follow up on. And I think I want to just finish this video by saying it's really important to know that we choose to be happy. We choose to be happy, and we can increase our happiness by being committed to those things that make us happy. Whatever that is, different for everybody. So I wish you well in your exciting journey as you are starting as of today to increase your happiness in small or big ways. And as always, I thank you so much for your valuable time in joining me on this video. I ask you please to follow me on Facebook or send me a message on Facebook Messenger. Follow me on Instagram and on YouTube. Thank you so much. And let's see those smiles coming.